Week 15 now of the Climate Tech Inc. NFL Prediction Show here on the Keon Sports YouTube channel. Cole McDaniel, Vince McKee, as always. We touched on a lot of college football last week. We talked a lot about the Heisman. We talked a little bit about maybe the playoff that's coming up. A couple of those things. You see Vince sporting the shirt as well right now, repping the Keon Sports gear. We're going to talk a little bit of college football because of bowl games coming up. They're starting later this week, rolling into this weekend. So we want to talk about that briefly, but we're going to mostly focus on the NFL today. But it was nice to have a change of pace and spend the majority of the show last week talking some college football. Before we start talking some college, I want to bring up our sponsor, Climate Tech Inc. And for 48 years, family owned and operated, Climate Tech has been the premier company for all HVAC services. For both residential and commercial, they have it covered. They offer free estimates on equipment replacement and 24-hour emergency service. Visit them at climate-tech.com. Vince, as always, wonderful to be with you. And we're looking forward to having bowl games starting to come up. It's a fun time of the season because you actually get some competitive games between teams that maybe just snuck in with bowl eligibility, and they're pretty evenly paired. So it will be a fun time of year right now, as it always is.
Glad to be here as always. Little guilty pleasure of mine is the meaningless bowls that are just played for the gamblers and football fanatics, my friend. Let me tell you, back in the olden days, and we're going almost back a decade at this point, had an office job, and this is before I had kids, so I really didn't have any use for my vacation time. I would save up all my vacation time for NCAA March Madness when that would roll around, and then these stupidity bowl games that would come up that, again, didn't mean anything, but I loved them. So I would work half days, and I would leave when they would start doing these day bowl games during the work week. Head over to the Winking Lizard, free plug for them. Head over to the Winking Lizard, use a half-day PTO, and just begin the Christmas madness. In fact, guilty pleasure, like I said, years and years ago, before I even met my wife, I tied one on at a Winking Lizard on Christmas Eve, sobered up just enough to get to Christmas Eve Mass, watching, I don't even remember who was playing, but one of the more meaningless college football bowl games, I have to tell you. Just so to me, yeah, a lot of these games are completely meaningless. I do not even know why they it's money to the school, which is great. I'll never understand why rankings even matter at this point, because if you're not 1 through 4, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
So, because you're not, but just, I can't stop smiling because to me, me and you both, we're sports junkies. So It's a great time of year. Excited to try to pick a winner of these 3 games and have some fun. Down by 4, Pittsburgh winning or something. I pick against them. I picked Baltimore. Pittsburgh losing did me a giant help. And then about 30 seconds, maybe 90 seconds into the San Francisco Tampa Bay game, I was like, I'm going to split. I lost. You could just tell that Tampa Bay came out of the gate last week, and I immediately said to myself, what the heck did I just do? I just gave away a point because Tampa Bay had no business in that game. Brock Purdy, is he the next Tom Brady? I don't think so. But, hey, this time of year with the defense that good, San Francisco might be able to ride them pretty far. It's going to be interesting.
It is possible. So, college football, and we'll start there. Again, you talked about the bowl games. Also, they have an opportunity to pit teams against each other for just pure entertainment. Yeah. And they know exactly what they're doing. And really, one of the first games of the bowl season is one of those. And we're going to start it off with Cincinnati and Louisville. Well, pretty close in proximity, distance-wise anyway, which makes that fascinating because a lot of, let's face it, we know Cincinnati is basically Kentucky. The Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky. It's right there on the border. So there's a lot of intermingling between those fans of those two fan bases, their friends, their family members. So that makes it interesting. Now, added heat between the football programs. Luke Fickell becomes the head coach at Wisconsin, and guess who becomes the new head coach of Cincinnati? Well, that is none other than Scott Satterfield, the Louisville head coach. So he spent his first week now at Cincinnati. It had been the reports and what we're expecting to see. So I mean, it's added pressure. It's interesting. Cincinnati's the better team coming into this game. They have the better record. But will Louisville maybe have an extra little bit of beef that their coach is no longer their coach and have a desire to get the win? Certainly possible. But I'm going to say that Cincinnati does pull this one offense. I think they get the win, but I actually think Louisville keeps it close. In a game that could have been meaningless with the changing of coaches and in the ties there, I think it's going to give Louisville some extra added oomph and make Cincinnati sweat. The Bearcats are going to have to claw out a victory in this one. That's why I have it is a 27-23 Cincinnati victory.
Not going to give you a score, but I've been picking college football bowl games for many years. Like I said, I love it, right? The one rule I always stuck to, if a coach left, I never pick them. So if a coach leaves the program before the bowl game, I never pick them. Well, this game clearly can't end up in a tie. It happened to both, right? Mm-hmm. That being the case, then I go to my old standby, just pick the better team. With that being the case, we're going to go with Cincinnati. What a calamity, man. If that Louisville coach, would you say his name was Shepard something or other?
Satterfield.
Shepard Satterfield. What a name.
No, Scott Satterfield. I don't know where you're getting Shepard from.
Scott. Good old Scotty. Yeah.
Scott Satterfield.
That was my name. Seriously, like,
where is Shepard coming from?
Go for it, baby.
Shepardson.
I have no idea, man. My day job. Full disclosure here. I work in AR is the best way to say bill collector. Once called a guy by the name of Roger Rue. Now, you tell me the name Roger Rue doesn't stand out. So, God forbid, me and Emily, here we are. If we ever had that third baby, if it's a boy, then the names are either going to be Peter James, Cole McDaniel Jr., or Roger Rue. One of those three.
Well, I'm honored. But are you sure that's not a fake name? Because you have been known.
Roger Rue's a real name.
You have been known to say a fake name. So we will just we'll just stop it there. It has happened in a throwback broadcast years ago. So anybody who got to hear that game, again, that is always a fun one. So
gotta love that first week of high school football season.
Hey, week one's always the toughest. It is for sure.
Worst.
So turning to the next game here with these bowl games. And by the way, I know Vince loves all the names for these bowl games.
Terrible.
He was texting me about that again. We just talked about the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Again, that one's going to be played at Fenway Park.
Horrible.
Also, here's the other interesting thing I forgot to mention. Because of it's at Fenway, they don't have enough room for the teams to be on opposite sidelines. So Louisville and Cincinnati will be set up on the same sideline, which makes it even more fun.
I was wondering about that because I was trying to picture the dimensions in my head. Cool hockey arena, though. When they do a hockey game at Fenway, that's actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next one, the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. And this is between Florida and number 14 Oregon State. Now, this one got interesting because Anthony Richardson has declared for the draft the quarterback for Florida. So who steps up? Jack Miller. Why is this game really interesting to me, even though Oregon State is certainly the favorite in this game? It's interesting to me because Jack Miller has his Ohio State Buckeye ties. You might remember him as the third-string quarterback for Ohio State last season. C.J. Stroud was the starter. Kyle McCord and Jack Miller were there. Quinn Ewers kind of started as that fourth guy. And then Ewers kind of made his way up above Jack Miller throughout the season. Miller left, Ewers left, and then McCord and Stroud, of course, still with Ohio State. So now Jack Miller has his opportunity to step up and play. Four-star quarterback, has some mobility. I think he's a fairly accurate quarterback. He didn't have the same arm strength as Kyle McCord, but a little bit more mobile. He just wasn't going to be a guy to get playing time at Ohio State, but he is a good quarterback. I actually think he has an opportunity to put on a showing and prove that he's the guy for the future for Florida come this next season and down the road as well. So maybe a great trial for him, an excellent audition going up against an Oregon State team who, like I said, ranked 14th. They've had a good season. I'm going to say that Oregon State, they still get the win here. And they're honestly favorite I've seen the line at 7.5 points. I've seen it up to 10 points. I've seen it move around, but it's continued to go up since Richardson declared for the draft. I'm going to actually say that Florida still keeps that game fairly close. Now, I have them losing by 10 on the nose, 30 to 20. But I think Jack Miller actually has a decent performance, and a Florida team that's underperformed this season actually at least test the Beavers, who are just trying to cap off an excellent season because they had been the bottom of the Pac-12 for quite a long time, it felt like.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, it's been a good season bouncing back. I mean, you look at that, not a team you ever expect to kind of compete for a Big 12 championship, but always good when they play well, right? I don't normally, in years past, just by looking at bowl seasons and having fun with, the predictions and the pick'ems, I almost actually never pick against the SEC when they're playing against any other conference. Kind of one of my rules of thumb. I was all set actually to pick Florida just based on the level of competition alone. But to me, going to that backup quarterback, who knows? He might be great. He might lead the Heisman chase next year. Who really knows, right? Time will tell with him. But that's some big time pressure coming up, starting a big time bowl game like this. That being said, I'm going to pick against Florida in this one.
Now, as we move to the next one, I mostly went with this game. I do think it's an interesting matchup, but I'm going to start off by saying this. Shout out to our guy Dom Clary, all of his great MAC coverage he did this year. I wanted to toss Toledo in there. Also, the ties for you, Emily, of course, Toledo Rockets alum. So you spent plenty of time there yourself. She spent plenty of time there. So I think it is time to certainly talk about Toledo as they play Liberty in the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl.
Horrendous.
These names, right? Aren't they just great? Aren't they just fantastic?
That's why people drink so much during these meetings.
So Liberty, actually a team that's actually had some success for the last couple of seasons. They've put up pretty good records. They're better with Wills last year at quarterback. That really put them in the spotlight. A lot of talk around Liberty because of him at quarterback. Not as much talk around this team this year, but they're a good team. Toledo, though, has, I think, a really solid defense. I really like Dallas Gant, linebacker who transferred from Ohio State. I think he's going to actually make it into the league, into the NFL, and whether he ends up finding his way to being a starter or just being depth, I think he's a solid player, good tackler. There's some other nice pieces that they have. On offense, I really like Finn, their quarterback. Does he have a super strong arm? No. His arm strength is maybe lacking a little bit. He almost kind of throws similar to like Tyrod Taylor always did. He didn't have much zip on the ball. He kind of just floats it in there. But he's very mobile. He's a good runner. He's athletic. And that's what I like about him. I think they have some decent pieces, and I have Toledo winning this game 34-28. I think this is actually going to be a good one, a close one, maybe one of the better early bowl games we see in the first week or so.
Man, I couldn't agree more. As much as I disagree with the name of the bowl being silly, the actual two teams involved to me are very underrated. Mm-hmm. Both very good teams, both very, very capable of upsetting a Big Six kind of team. Sneaky good, sneaky talent. Now, I have to, like he said, hedge my bet a little bit. I actually went to Toledo this year, covered the game against Kent State back in about mid-October, right when the Guardians were in the playoffs, right around that time. And I'll tell you what, I was extremely impressed. They got down to Kent State. 5 minutes into the game was 21-0 Kent State. Mm-hmm. And Toledo ended up winning big by 3 or 4 touchdowns by the time it was done, scored nearly 60 points. they just showed they could put up offense on anybody. As Cole was saying, Finn might not have the strongest arm, but this guy knows how to get open in the backfield, find that window, and make the throw. So going with Toledo, and like you said, Cole, I'm actually excited to watch that game.
Yeah, I actually think there are quite a few good ones to start off. There are always some nice surprise games. I love to just turn the games on during bowl season. It's a good time. A lot of close matchups. I actually think they do a really good job of pairing some of those early games as well. Some of those early teams, better than they do with some of those later games where it's like, why is the 6 seed playing the 17 seed, or things like that in this game? You could have put two better teams against each other. But I actually think they do a really good job when it comes to some of those earlier bowl games and putting them together. I think that's huge.
No doubt about it.
Vince,
by the way,
continuing to plug the merch.
I got one more before the night's over. Let's talk some NFL.
Is it going to be a banner with our faces on it? Because this is a surprise to me at this point. I knew you were wearing this shirt because I saw the Facebook post. Didn't know the water bottle was coming out. Didn't know about something else coming out. I mean, I'm feeling like I don't have enough Keon Sports merch here in this. I got my credential. You can see back there. But aside from that, yeah, that's it. So
fans, usually I share every bit of information with Cole. He's pretty much what they call like a work wife or whatever. Like we are constantly talking. You know what I mean? I don't think there's at this point in our friendship, there's very little we don't know. So that being said, both these items tonight are surprises. There's one more, but I'm gonna make them wait. Let's talk some NFL.
So we move to the NFL. We're going to start with the marquee matchup as we always do. And we actually talked about this game earlier in the year when it was the reverse fixture in Miami. Yep. The Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins face each other. Why I wanted to talk about this one again is because the Dolphins have been sliding just a little bit. And the Bills haven't had much offense here as of late. And they're going to be playing in snow, in the cold. And the funny thing is the story was that at SoFi, in the last game against the Chargers, it was like 55 degrees, and the Dolphins had heaters on their sideline. Heaters and 55 degrees. I mean, that's got to be like a heat wave, you know, if you're in Buffalo right now. So it's going to be cold. It could be interesting in the sense of I actually don't expect many points. So I'm going to give my prediction here in just a few moments, but I'm going to toss it to you first, Vince. Do you think either team puts up many points in this game?
I do not. And the crazy thing about this is, luckily, I'm done. My fantasy football team hit the skids. I'm done. It's almost a relief at this point. But fantasy football owners, you look at guys like Devin Singletary, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, Tua, all of them. And this is your playoffs right now. And a lot of those guys are on playoff fantasy football teams. So for the weather to be nasty like it's going to be this weekend, I just love this time of year because of that. It really screws with people. That being said, though, I think this game's going to be closer than people think because of the weather. But Buffalo seems to have a tendency this year, with the exception of a few, not many, they seem to have a tendency to pull out those close games, pull out the games that mean something the most. Look back to last year. I can't give you the exact week, and I apologize, but I do know it was late in the season when Buffalo just steamrolled through Tennessee late in the year during really cold weather. A lot of people always want to joke around and talk about that one game against New England where I think, Mac Jones threw 3 passes and New England beat them in like 10-degree weather. That's an anomaly. I think this week you're going to see the better team win. This was actually, out of all the picks this week, because I think there was a lot of tough picks this week, quite frankly, Buffalo to me was one of the easier ones.
Yeah, and I went with Buffalo as well here. I just think they're going to handle the cold better. I think Miami continues their skid, and I actually have the Dolphins only scoring 10 points in this game. I just think it's going to be a defensive battle. We're going to deal with the snow, and I don't think Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I don't think they're going to see the ball too much. I think
they're both banged up.
I think it's going to have to be the ground game is going to be the key here with the snow. And can the ground game for the Dolphins really get going against a Bills front seven that expect it coming? I think Matt Milano especially is going to lead that linebacking core. They're going to come up, they're going to fill the gaps, and they're going to make tackles. So that is the main difference, I think, is the Bills front seven. They're going to be the key in this game. So like I said, 21-10 Buffalo. As we turn to Sunday Night Football, we just talked about this game like 2 weeks ago. There was a bye week in between, and the last time these two teams played each other ended in a tie. That same week, I picked the New York Giants to win the game, and you picked the Commanders because your upset pick that week was the New York Jets over the Minnesota Vikings. And it looked like we were going to possibly split, and somehow I snuck out of there with that tie, and we were both wrong. So so that was helpful that week. Now, these two teams playing against each other here this week. Remember, you picked the Commanders, I picked the Giants. Now on Sunday Night Football, after a bye week, to be able to think things over for the Commanders, I now have Washington winning this matchup in a close game, 22-17. Still think it's going to be fairly low scoring, very close between these two teams, but I actually think just at home on Sunday night, I think the Commanders are going to be prepped because they just saw the Giants, and they probably should have won the last game. They were just slightly the better team. They just didn't get it done. I think they do it this week.
Well, I picked the Commanders too, and my reason actually, was a little bit different. This late in the season, I want to go with the coach who's been there before as a head coach, and that's Ron Rivera. So to me, I actually think when you break down all the X's and O's, I kind of feel these teams are dead even. The Giants have surprised me this season without how talented they've been and how many games they've won. But at the end of the day, in this situation, because these games now the next 4 weeks are incredibly important. And these are two teams fighting for either that 6th or 7th spot, right? They're not going to jump ahead of the Eagles. They're probably not going to jump ahead of the Cowboys, but they still have a shot at the playoffs. That being said, I absolutely love Ron Rivera. I wish the Browns would have picked him up a few years back when we got Stefanski. I would have loved Ron Rivera. That's who I wanted at that time. As you recall, he went to Washington.
Yeah.
Browns got Stefanski. That being said, going to go with the Commanders here. And again, shockingly enough, really looking forward to this game. Love the fact that it's on Sunday night.
Yeah, I think that's a good rivalry game. Two teams that really have basically identical records. It's very similar for those two teams. And they find themselves battling for that third spot behind Dallas and behind the Eagles. It's so funny that a couple years ago, that division was the worst in football. And now, right now, this season, very possibly might be the best division this season alone. Now, I know what you're going to say, and I know how I feel as well. I think the Giants, they had a really weak schedule. Commanders, it hasn't maybe been the strongest schedule. I would say that division hasn't had the toughest opponents to go up against, but when it comes to record-wise and how they're performing, those teams are getting wins, which is the big deal. That's how you advance. So that's why it's been so competitive. That's going to be a fun one to probably decide how they finish, later this season when it comes down to the final standings. So going to be a fun one on Sunday Night Football to see a division rivalry in prime time.
I think the team that loses goes completely south and probably loses 3 of their last 4.
As we turn to the upset picks, there were a few that I took this week as well. Of course, I know this is what you always get excited for, and you feel like upset picks are your chance to come back and possibly be able to overtake me, really halt that 4-game lead that I've been holding here for a few weeks now. Last week, you thought you maybe had me with the Cardinals. I ended up taking the Cardinals as well. We ended up both being wrong on that. Vince, I wouldn't be surprised if we picked the same upset picks this week as well. But I'm going to toss it to you first. What's your official upset pick?
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. Let me just pull up Yahoo Sports here just to make sure before it comes out of my mouth. Okay, so I have written down 2 games. One of them is a pick 'em, And actually, I have to look, but these are the two. One of them is a pick 'em, so I don't know if that counts or not. And I'm going with Detroit on the road against the Jets. That game, as of now, it could change. Yahoo Sports has the Jets. I mean, it's 0, so it's a pick 'em, but going to go with the Lions there. If that doesn't count, because again, there's no line.
Yeah, it's
I
just
do.
even.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that
even
was
right now.
right. So that being the case, I am going to make my official upset pick: Pittsburgh over Carolina. I actually like Trubisky, and I know he looked awful last week when he came in the game. I just do. I get it, but I still think he plays his best football in the month of December. I don't know if he grew up in Northeast Ohio. That's the reason why. Whatever the deal may be, I still think he's a better quarterback than people think. I've never once called him a tier one top of the line starter by any stretch. But with Pickett still in concussion protocol, and from what we've seen this season, it's like when you get in that thing, you're out at least one game or one full game following. So don't have confidence in him coming back. How long is the run of Sam Darnold possibly going to last here in Carolina? I mean, this has been bizarre up and down with him. I need to get points, as they say in boxing, which I absolutely love, punches and bunches. Gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers as my official upset pick. But again, for you gamblers out there, I love Detroit. So who knows how that line's going to go between now and kickoff. But I think Detroit is one of the sneaky good teams that might surprise a lot of people down the stretch here. So there's a 2-some or a 1-some, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so technically, if that line is even right now, that would mean Detroit, they're really being looked at as pushing towards being the favorites because
Right. Because you get
three at home usually.
Yeah.
So the Jets would actually be the dog in that one. Because yes, the Lions, you're given 3 points.
Yeah, but if you're going up to the window in Vegas, they're going to tell you to shove it. It's a 0 line. They're not going to be like, "Oh, we're going to give you 3."
Yeah, no, I understand, but
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
I get the logic.
But technically, the Jets, as it's moving.
Listen, if you try to make the Jets your upset pick, we're gonna have a fight on our hands because that doesn't count.
The Jets aren't my upset pick, but I took the Jets just to be honest, because
that's fine.
I have the line as even. I have the line as even. That's what I was seeing, but I think the line is moving towards the Lions. Don't be surprised if by later in this week they're actually favorites in this game. I just feel like that's how it's trending right now. That just seems to be how it's positioned. But I have the Jets actually winning it just because I know nobody wants to go up against the Lions, but I just think at home, trying to make it into the playoffs, I think Robert Saleh just has something ingrained in that defense right now where they're clicking and they're tough. So if they can keep it a low-scoring game, they can win. I also have the Steelers beating the Panthers. So we're on the same page there because Trubisky's bad, but so's Sam Darnold. So who is the better team? I would say there's some better pieces on the Steelers in general.
Better coaching.
Yeah. So, but I got a couple others, and I'll get to my official one here in a moment. I picked the 49ers as well the last 2 weeks against the Dolphins and against the Buccaneers, and it paid off. I'm going to say that comes to an end. The Seahawks lost to the Panthers last week. I was surprised by that. I think that the Seahawks actually come away with the win against the Niners. Division game. It just feels like the Seahawks have declined a bit. They need to have a bounce back at some point, and their record's still pretty good. They still have a winning record. I think Geno Smith, those guys get it clicking again here against the Niners and get a big win. Now to my official pick. And I thought about making it the Seahawks one because that's a big one. But I wanted to mention one other game because there is one specific player I want to talk about. Let's turn back to the beginning of 2022 as I was talking about my prospect rankings. I'm going to say this. Go back to my quarterback prospect rankings. Who was my number one quarterback? Who did I expect to be the best guy out of this group? And he hasn't had a chance yet. That's Desmond Ridder. I have the Atlanta Falcons hanging 31 points on the Saints and beating them 31-14. I think that even without Kyle Pitts, Ridder's going to go out there and he's going to perform well. I like what he has skill-wise. Size-wise, the mobility, the way he plays, he reminds me a lot of Justin Fields. Excuse me, Justin Herbert. Got the Justins confused. Justin Herbert. Not quite the same arm strength, but very mature player, great leader in college, probably going to be a great leader here in the NFL. I expect wise beyond his years. And all the execs in the NFL that sat down with him loved him. Their only concern was that arm strength, okay, and some of that ability with the arm and maybe a slight bit of inaccuracy coming out. If he's touched up on those things with the accuracy and that's improved, then I think there's nothing stopping him. It allows the Falcons the next couple of weeks to evaluate what Ridder is, and then in the offseason, put more and more pieces around him through the draft, through free agency, and I think they could do it. They could really start to turn around that team in a division that's kind of struggling, maybe compete to win it next year, depending upon what happens with Tampa and Tom Brady as well in the offseason. Desmond Ridder, I think, is their franchise quarterback long term, and I think you're going to see all the potential for him this week. Will it be perfect? Probably not, but he's had a bye week, 2 weeks of practice to prep for being the starter. I think he's going to look pretty darn good.
I think it's going to look pretty darn good, too. I took the Saints in that one, only because I've always kind of picked against a rookie starter in their first start. But everything else you said, I 100% agree with. If they would have started him about 4 weeks ago, I actually think that would have been a lot smarter. Mm-hmm. You knew Marcus Mariota wasn't the guy. He's never been the guy, and it kind of blows my mind that they stuck with him that long in a division this crappy that they possibly could have won and had an unbelievable Cinderella story on their hands. All that, I mean, they got off to a hot start, and it kind of helped them a little bit. But I really do think, I mean, it was a few weeks ago on a Thursday night when I lost the game to you, where they got crushed by Carolina when they couldn't block for Mariota, and that was a changer there. So there we go. I'm a little surprised. I kind of thought you might have picked the Rams over the Packers as your upset. But yeah, I mean, pretty interesting stuff there. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good week. I keep looking down, and we got San Francisco, Seattle different because I took Seattle, New Orleans, Atlanta. We have different, and Detroit and the Jets. Thus far, we have different. So it should be a fun week.
Yeah, it should be a fun week, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing Desmond Ridder out there with the Falcons. I think that's gonna be fun. We'll see how that works out, but the door is open for him to be the best quarterback in this class. Kenny Pickett's been pretty average, improving, but average. Wills came in, did really nothing when he was in for the Titans, and Corral, he's been out injured. So Brock Purdy's honestly, he and Bailey Zappi have been the two that have maybe at times popped off a little bit this year, but with their lack of size, I just look at them as long-term backups, guys who I think are smart, have some ability to be a backup, but they're not going to be long-term starters. Ridder, 6'4", and really athletic. I think you're going to see him also use his legs and be able to run. Speaking of a quarterback being able to run, well, we got a couple of them. Actually, quite a few that we could talk about. In the Browns-Ravens game, Deshaun Watson, he's a guy who can run. He's been using his legs quite well with his offensive line not doing much for him protection-wise. It's kind of reminiscent of his Houston Texans days when he was running around scrambling for his life. He's been doing the same thing the last 2 weeks. Also a guy who can run, Lamar Jackson, not playing. Tyler Huntley, backup, he can run, also not playing. Well, they have another quarterback who fits that system actually quite well, and that's Anthony Brown, former Oregon quarterback. Again, he can move. He's just your third string. He's not to the same level. I'm going to keep this short and sweet here for the Browns. Unfortunate where they're at right now because the team has all the ability on paper to make it to the postseason. Hey, the Falcons loss, the Jets loss, those were the big two that kind of made things tough, and you were climbing uphill from the start of the season because of those losses where you should have won those games. They weren't fully able to get their footing. Once they take one step in the right direction, there'd be a step back. Some of that is certainly due to coaching, not just Stefanski, but Woods and Prefer and all those guys. Some of it's due to injuries on the offensive line. I mean, Ethan Posick was looking fantastic at center looking like maybe the long-term center when it was Nick Harris who's supposed to be the guy coming into the year. But I think Posic's the guy, and he should be the guy. Him being out, I think, has really hurt the line. Wills hasn't been performing well. And I just think trying to plug and play with Frohold as the center, Wills not performing well. Teller seems to be still a little banged up. I think that's hurt the play of Jack Conklin. It's hurt the play of Batonio. They just haven't looked the same. There's a lot going on there. They have a lot of ability, but there's going to be some changes that are going to be made in the offseason. We'll see how drastic they are. But Andrew Berry, he's going to really need to be able to hit on some of those second, third, fourth round picks this next year to fill what they can do as well with this group. And maybe do they think about trading away a star to maybe see if they can snag a first rounder this year and clear up a little bit of cap space. I know they got plenty of room, but maybe, again, it's time to, I know people might come for me, maybe time to look to move a guy like Myles Garrett, who's in the prime of his career, and cash out on his value and
He's not working out.
Get a ton of assets for him.
Yep.
So it's a possibility this offseason, but I have them winning this game 23-12 over the Ravens, just for the sole fact of I think Watson was really piecing it together. He was clicking. Are they going to look perfect? No. But I think that Watson and that group, they should get Nick Chubb the ball again. They should be able to beat a team that's on their third string quarterback.
Yeah, I'm going Baltimore in this one strictly because the offensive line is completely falling apart. And it's weird that you said that because, I mean, we're almost out of time here, so I can't go too deep into it. I love Myles Garrett, but if you can't find a way to make this work, get what you can for him now. It's not working. So you're short so many pieces on that defense. The Joker's hurt. He's out the rest of the season. Your linebacking core is destroyed. I actually think third string quarterback or not, I think Baltimore's going to run all over our defense. Yeah, we have not been able to stop the run all season long. And to me, that's where that pick comes from. So we're going to have, plenty of shows between now and the end of the year where we could really kind of dive into this topic further. But it's just one of those things to me where I think Watson is the man long term. I think you saw him start to come out of it a little bit this weekend in Cincinnati. It's really, truly not his fault. You have to give this guy 5 or 6 games and a full off season with no distractions. And I think next year he's going to tear it up. We've seen David Bell develop the last few weeks. Yep. That's been fun to see. I just think when you think you can't hit any worse rock bottom, if they truly do have a third string quarterback starting this weekend, which it looks like they're probably going to, and you lose to Baltimore with their third string, all holy hell breaks loose. We'll see what happens from there. Christmas, a few weeks away, guys. I just want to throw this out real quick. A lot of us working from home, and like myself, I work from home a couple nights a week, and I use a mouse and a mouse pad and a computer clearly, and the mouse pad I use is the official Keon Sports mouse pad. Be sure to contact me at coachvin14@yahoo.com if you want a t-shirt, a mouse pad, or a water bottle. Colio, take us home, my man.
Vince has all the gear. Absolutely, he does. He's got everything. So props to him for sporting it, not telling me coming into tonight. I got a pleasant surprise. Now, if you want to reach out to a company who also takes great care of you, just like Keon Sports will if you get the gear, that's Climate Tech Inc. Again, they'll cover you for all of your HVAC needs, both residential, commercial. They have you covered. Really, the premier company for all HVAC services. Visit them at climate-tech.com. For the end of week 15, I've had a great time. For Cole McDaniel, for Vince McKee, everybody, once again, enjoy your weekend and enjoy football.